Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about something near and dear to our bearish hearts. That, of course, being movies. We love them. We go to see them all the time. We love to chat about them, and we're bears. So why not combine all of those things together, like the Five Lions forming Voltron, into something we hope you think will be cool, something we hope you'll have fun with. 6 years strong at this point, guys. We're kicking off 2019. This is our first show of the year.
Unbeatable.
I know. And ironically, we're going to be talking about movies that came out in 2018, even though it's 2019. But you know what? That's okay, because we are just coming back from the holiday break. We actually took a week off so that we could spend some time with our friends and our families, seeing a bunch of movies. Probably, I know we did. Will, I'm sure you did too. I think I saw a few on Facebook. So I'm pumped to dive into three movies, especially we had a chance to catch up with over the holiday break, that being Aquaman, Mary Poppins Returns, and Bumblebee. We're going to be talking about all three on this week's show. But before we dive into those films, and I promise I'm going to lay off the Aquaman puns as much as possible, let me introduce you to my co-hosts and two guys that I am so thrilled to be kicking off 2019 with. Jim Pugliafico is here. Welcome back, babe. How you doing?
Good to be back. Thanks, babe. And good to see you, Will, after the holidays. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It's going to be a fun ride tonight.
Indeed. And as Jim mentioned, Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will. How are you? Did you and Wiggles and the pups have good holidays?
Oh my gosh, it was first of all, hey everybody. Yeah, it's nice to be on this side of 2019, 2018 is in our rear view mirror. We only have forward to look forward to. Lots of good movies coming out this year, but I'm really excited about the fact that we still have some catch up to do between the movies here and some of the things we've got coming up. There's still a lot of 2018 left in our tank.
That's true, and I do love ketchup, so it sounds good to me.
On certain, you are krilling me with these puns.
I see what you did there. Oh, goodness. Well, want to say hi to some folks who are in the live chat with us right now. Looks like there are a few already. Jordan Riley's in the chat. He says, hey, guys, watching you from my new PS4. Well, Jordan, congrats on your new PS4. Hope you are loving yours as much as I love mine. Glad to have you with us to help us kick off this new year. For anyone else that is watching live, be sure to say hello in that live chat. And if you have some thoughts on any of the movies we're going to be talking about this week, feel free to share them, as long as they're YouTube appropriate, and iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify appropriate. We may share your thoughts on air. Anything that is not appropriate for mass public consumption can be sent directly to brad@moviebearspodcast.com. That's just fine as long as it's legal, please.
Oh, Brad. You're insatiable.
I am, but usually when I say something like that, we start getting dick pics. And, I'm okay with unsolicited dick pics from podcast listeners.
Hey,
it's fine.
Nothing to feel guilty about.
If it's going to happen, it might as well, happen because we're open to it and not because it's some weird, tweaked out rando on Growler, that you wouldn't want to see dick pics from. Anyway, and I see what you did there. Well, guilty. Nice. The Aquaman puns write themselves, right?
Yes, they do.
Well, guys, we have three movies to talk about. So I say we just get right to it. Yeah, are we down?
Were you gonna say we should just dive in?
I almost did, and then I stopped myself because I'm like, A, I said it earlier, and B, I promised that I would try and lay off the Aquaman puns. But Will, you made no such promise. So,
I made no such promise. It is go time.
Jim, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So then here's what we'll do. We're going to talk Aquaman first. Then comes Mary Poppins Returns. Then comes Bumblebee. In case you haven't seen these films, they've been out for a couple weeks, but if you haven't seen them yet, just a heads up, we are going to be spoiling them right away. That's right. We aren't dividing things into spoilers, non-spoilers this time. Otherwise, we'd be here for 4.5 hours, probably. So if you haven't seen the film we're going to talk about, if you're listening live, come on back in about 20 minutes. We'll be on to the next film at that point. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, through your favorite podcast medium stream, go ahead and skip ahead using the handy-dandy time index in the show notes that Jim puts together for you. Anyway, I've rambled enough. Here we go. Our discussion of Aquaman. Boop, 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 boop. All right. So, Will, why don't we're going to change things up a little bit. Why don't you just give us a little bit of basic background here, and then we'll just kind of jump into the conversation.
Absolutely. So Aquaman, ripped right out of the pages of DC Comics. It's about the aquatic superhero Aquaman, who previously appeared in like the Justice League movies. Well, Aquaman learns that he is the heir to this underwater kingdom called Atlantis. Makes sense, right? And he has to step forward to lead his people and become a hero to the world at large. Aquaman is directed by James Wan. This is the dude that brought us a lot of horror movies, actually, between the Saw franchise, Insidious, and Annabelle, and The Conjuring. Like, he's had his fingers all over those types of movies. But more important, I think, are the leads of this. I think that you probably know at this point that Jason Momoa, the Dothraki himself, the guy with insane abs that don't quit, plays the role of Aquaman himself. Also featuring, let's see, who else do we have in this? We've got Amber Heard, we've got Willem Dafoe, and we've got Nicole Kidman. And are any of these like spoiled? No, they're all fine.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and Patrick Wilson as well. Here's the thing about Aquaman. I've made no bones about the fact that these DC movies have, by and large, just not worked for me. I think that they've had a lot of tone issues, especially under the Snyderverse, where grimdark is the order of the day, and there's no joy. And you need that, especially for characters who are supposed to inspire, I don't know, hope. But this movie here remedies a lot of that. It's not a perfect movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a good enough movie. And for me, honestly, that means everything. It's cheesy as hell in a lot of places. Some of the stuff is over the top in a good way. Some of it's over the top in a bad way. This isn't going to be like anyone's favorite superhero of all time, probably, but I think this is a good enough movie, and probably the first of these DC movies, maybe barring the first 2/3 of Wonder Woman, that I actually had a good time with. So I recommend Aquaman, and it feels weird to say that.
Yeah, Will, I'm kind of right there with you. Maybe I even liked it a little bit more, even for a non superhero movie guy. Going into this, I had no idea what to expect, because, like you said, the DC movies haven't been great. Marvel movies have been fine, but again, it's not my particular genre, so I went in with a very open mind, and I was really happy with the things that they did in this movie, and they obviously tried to make this movie fun, and I think they succeeded on a lot of levels. It's fun visually. It's James Wan brings some things to the table for this genre that I don't think we've seen before, either in the Marvel or DC, universes, and I think that was refreshing for me. It kind of embraced a playfulness and a kookiness. And yeah, sometimes it went over the top a little bit, but to me, that all lended for the fun. We've only seen this movie once. And of all the holiday movies that we've seen, this is the one that I probably would want to see again. I mean, there's a lot of stuff crammed into this movie that kind of goes by really fast. And it just kind of throws the kitchen sink. This was a fun ride for me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one too, and it's so weird to say that I had fun in a DC movie. Like that just seems like such a weird thing, to experience in one of these films. But I definitely enjoyed this one quite a bit, and I have to say I had my qualms about Jason Momoa as Aquaman. Yes, we saw him in Justice League, and he was fun in that, but I was kind of like, where's my like King of Atlantis storyline? Like, where's my like, Aquaman and his like orange and green jumpsuit thing? And obviously some changes have to be made, but in Justice League, Jason Momoa looked like an underwater Dothraki. You know what I mean? Like he didn't really have that like iconic Aquaman look. And we're going right into spoilers here, so I'm just going to come out and say it. When he gets like the ancient trident of power or whatever the fuck it was called, and he gets the Aquaman armor that we know and love, which unfortunately both of those things were all over the media marketing for this film. So it's like, they're coming at some point, right? But it was
is he going to get the trident? I wonder if I saw. Oh, that's right. He was in the trailer.
I don't know. Is it going to happen? Probably.
It's on the show art for this episode.
I know, right? But I loved seeing those iconic pieces of Aquaman brought to life. And Jason Momoa is already kind of a big dude, right? But like seeing him in that like obviously padded Aquaman armor just kind of up things up a notch a little bit. And everything was so sparkly, you could even say it was shiny, like a sunken pirate wreck hit the deck. He looked good, and when he's like jumping around and fighting his misguided stepbrother or whatever to determine the fate of the kingdom and the world, I totally bought it. I fucking loved it. I had a ton of fun with it. There's some pacing issues. It kind of bogs down in the middle when it's all Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Aquaman and Mira, go to the desert of all places to find a trident, whatever. But
and then have a Power Rangers battle with Black Manta.
Black Manta, yeah. Rangers, you must get to Sicily immediately. Yeah, it was good. I think right along with Wonder Woman, Aquaman is a very solid outing for the DC film universe here, and it almost makes me wish we could just sweep away all of the Superman films, Batman in this universe, like just get rid of all the dark, gritty bullshit and like redo those characters, keep these movies in the new universe, and like have a do-over.
What was nice about this one, like, and you're absolutely right, like the middle section where they're running through the desert and they're doing the Indiana Jones stuff, that dragged a little bit. And there was some humor that didn't quite work. There were some romantic beats that didn't quite work, but whatever. You could tell they at least tried. This movie kind of threw everything at the wall so that some of it would stick, and that's fine. But there was a moment towards the end, and you referenced it. Aquaman is in this trench, and he's basically got this moment ahead of him where it is this impossible, no one's ever come back from it alive type scenario where he has to face down with this demon voiced by Julie Andrews, which is interesting enough.
Is that that is a genius casting move right there, to have Julie Andrews play a fucking badass, super deep sea villain like Behemoth, Leviathan in the ocean.
More so, it's a badass power play to have Julie Andrews cast in an Aquaman the same weekend that Mary Poppins Returns opens.
Exactly. Yeah.
But during that showdown with Kirathan, basically like Aquaman has to like strip away a lot of his like bravado bullshit, which is like part of his personality. He's like a boisterous dude, and he has to be kind of a leader. And in doing so, he's rewarded with this armor and this trident, and he gets this cool, like, coming out of the waterfall, like, hero moment. Like, that's what I wanted out of the Superman movies. That's what I wanted out of Dawn of Justice. That's what I wanted. There was some of it in Justice League. But that's what I wanted more of. It's just those iconic, like, these are heroes. These are icons. These are 75-plus-year-old characters who have amusement park rides and stuff named after them. Like, you want these iconic moments. And You got it here, and you get it with Wonder Woman during the No Man's Land and like that, like doing the, pushing the dude out of the glass, like in slow-mo type thing. This feels like a superhero movie. This feels good. This feels like what I want it to be. That moment was so fucking badass.
Yeah, they have like this movie, like right away, as soon as you go into the underwater world, Atlantis, you have guys riding seahorses, right? Armored seahorses. And then you have other guys riding sharks that roar and shoot laser beams like out and destroy stuff. So and right away, that the movie's really going for it in those moments. There was so much that I really enjoyed in this. I want to talk a little bit about Patrick Wilson in this. He played the brother. I thought he did a really good job as a
real quick. I'm so sorry. Before we move on, I had a question. It just popped into my brain. You mentioned the seahorses and the sharks, Jim.
Yeah.
So did you notice that the seahorses had jets on the side of them? They had like water jet engines.
Jets and sharks.
Yes!
Jets and sharks. They should have been like snapping their fingers.
And the octopus playing drums. Like there was so much in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, Patrick Wilson, I liked him in this. At first I'm like, is that Patrick? Because he had this weird like hair going on and slick back like blonde wig kind of. Which is kind of what you expected. If from the comics, right? Doesn't Aquaman have like blonde hair?
He does.
But in this movie, they gave the blonde hair to the brother, which was kind of cool. And I mean, we've seen the conflicted, evil brother kind of thing done to death in this genre. But I just like you could tell that Patrick Wilson was really giving his all to this performance. He definitely wasn't phoning it in.
Steve in chat says, did you feel the Aquaman suit reveal would have been better had it not been in the trailer? And, we talked about that a little bit, how just like it was really oversaturated in terms of all the media and all the marketing. But the suit reveal that most impressed me, more so than the Aquaman one, was when Amber Heard playing Queen Mara appears in that jellyfish dress. That is the most interesting and coolest like thing I've probably seen costume wise in a while. And yeah, it's a costume made out of CGI, but like I was just absolutely living for her damn jellyfish dress.
Queen Mira, the girl on Jellyfish Fire.
And it's like I'm in the process of getting like a massive jellyfish tattoo as well. So it's like I'm probably a little bit like tuned into this. But yeah, when I was watching that the whole time, I was just like, I love her dress. Can she wear that to the Oscars? And no, because, she'd have to have a green screen following behind her on stage. But still, I love this so much.
So, Will, are you going to draw any inspiration or design elements from the dress to put in your tattoo?
Well, fortunately, I'm already most of the way there.
Oh,
so
okay.
At this point it's just coloring, so like it's too late for me to draw inspiration from this, but still it was nice to see. It was fun.
Just put a Mira sticker on your shoulder.
Oh yeah, just have her like right here on my elbow, like she's wearing
totally.
Yeah, I love that. What about Willem Dafoe, guys?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, I mean, I don't know, did he do something different than he has in any other movie?
He had different hair.
Yeah.
I mean, they made him look 30 years younger.
Somehow.
Yeah, that was weird. Like, I love Willem Dafoe and stuff. He's just an absolute scene stealer. The de-aging stuff, I don't know how well that worked. It really looked like, have you ever seen those jokes where like someone's doing the Snapchat filter and they're so blurry that they just look like a fuzz? Like they just look like a peach colored fuzz. Well, that's sort of how he looked in this movie. Yeah. I don't know if that was the best of effects.
I was like, they fucking Snapchat filtered him to death, but they didn't have to Snapchat filter Nicole Kidman because she still looks amazing.
I love Willem Dafoe, and seeing him in here was a treat to see him show up here. But I got the sense that his performance, like the character was very restrained, right? It's a very restrained character. So it's not, I don't know. We just didn't get the full Willem Dafoe-ness of Willem Dafoe, I don't think, in this role. He played the kind of like the Yoda character in this, right? He's the old, kind of like the old master. And so he was very much reserved, and I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more. I'm not sure the casting was super inspired there, because it felt like he's got a lot more in the tank to give a character, and this character was a little flat.
I think part of the reason... Oh, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, no, please, go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, I think part of the reason they cast him in this was because he's just pretty much appearing in everything right now. Like, at the same time this movie came out, he's the narrator in Vox Lux, which came out like around the same time as this. And he plays Vincent Van Gogh in At Eternity's Gate, which just came out as well. So he had 3 movies that opened in December, which is impressive.
And it's interesting that we keep seeing him like turn up working with child actors. Like, you know, earlier in the movie, you might as well have called it like Off the Coast of Florida project. Like when he's working with young Aquaman and like trying to, you know, teach him about his people. And don't forget, teaching him about the super cool spin move of doom that can repel anything. I thought that was kind of weak, personally. But,
I agree.
You know, yeah. But I mean, I liked Willem Dafoe. He was Willem Dafoe in this. I do like seeing him turn up in things. I don't think he was like a galvanizing force, though, in this movie. Like, he was never really in mortal peril. He's always just kind of standing there in the background being like, well, Your Highness, oh, I think we should blah. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about? I want to talk about the weirdness of the opening. Just right off the bat, right? Nicole Kidman somehow washes ashore in a storm. The lighthouse keeper, young lighthouse keeper, brings her in. They fall in love. They start a family. Of course, they have little baby Aquaman, and I love Nicole Kidman in this movie. Like she was on her game, both as young mother Nicole Kidman, like fish out of water Nicole Kidman, I guess we could call her at the beginning, and then later on as she shows up in the trench underworld or whatever. I really loved her, and then she gets a badass, probably one of the best fight scenes in the fucking movie right off the bat in like the first 10 minutes. Which my eyes were like, holy shit, that's a pretty awesome fight scene. The way they move that camera around, you know, not just the effects of, you know, the punches and the blows and stuff that were dealt out, but the way the camera moved around made it a really exciting fight scene, I thought. There were several fight scenes in the movie. I liked that one. I liked the one that
the underwater fight.
Well, I like the first one that happened between Aquaman and his brother. I like that a lot until they got into the whatever the vehicles were that they were like chase each other around with. Right up until that point, I liked that fight. And then there was a fight in Sicily between Manta and Aquaman and Mira and the henchman that was pretty. The choreography and the way they moved that fight around the different parts of the city was pretty inventive. This just a lot to like about this movie, I think.
Yeah, when the film let the choreography go, I think that it did its best, especially the Nicole Kidman fight. There were moments where, I mean, especially the underwater stuff for very obvious reasons, there was so much CG involved in the choreography that it made some of the movements feel a little muddy in spots. Like there were moments in the fight between kind of the one halfway through the movie or whatever, when Aquaman fights his brother in the arena, where it was a little hard for me to tell kind of who was doing what, because there was a lot of quick moving motion, but also everything kind of had that like slightly diffused underwater CGI look. So it wasn't as crisp and wasn't as easy to see, but it's a quibble. It was still fine.
Well, it is funny. Like there's several moments in the underwater stuff where it's like I don't know if they were trying to save money in the budget or what, but they found convenient reasons to suddenly be in a non-aquatic setting. Like, ooh, we're in an underwater like crate that's sealed, and now we have atmosphere and we can talk, and we don't, have to have our hair waving around. Maybe the man bun budget was just too small. So
I'm wondering if that's why the whole desert sequence lasted as long as it did. Just like,
Yep.
We need to save some money somewhere.
It seems like such a bizarre choice. Like, okay, we have to go find this incredible MacGuffin. We better leave the ocean and go to the desert.
Yeah. Boy, people really like that Aquaman guy who used to play a desert nomad in a popular television show. How can we capitalize on that?
Has anybody got a dragon he could ride? Is there a dragon around here?
No, but we got a shark that spits lasers.
Oh goodness. Well, I know we have a couple more movies to discuss, and there's probably more that we could get out of Aquaman here. But last question for me for you guys. We have a great Wonder Woman movie now. We have this, not great, but like fun, good Aquaman movie. If the Flash movie is anything like this, do you want to continue to see these movies build toward another eventual like team up a la Justice League movie? If it's sort of in this vein with this feel, or are we done with the team movies and just want the solo ones, or what do you guys feel?
For DC, I'm done with the team movies. I think that what got them into this boat to begin with was Marvel had a path that was remarkably successful, and so they tried to jump a bunch of steps and catch up. And as a result, they ended up with a weird hodgepodge, terribly paced, terribly toned franchise that almost killed their entire universe. Where they've been most successful is just letting the characters breathe and have fun within their own universes. I don't think they need to catch up on the franchise thing. I think they just need to put out good movies.
And I think we need to get out of this team. We got to build a team mentality for these movies. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a huge Avengers fan. I love Guardians of the Galaxy, but they started off on the screen anyway as a team, right? They were introduced as a team. So I got on board with that team like at the beginning. The whole building a team and hey, let's have them all come together. I'm not as big a fan. I'll be honest with you. Even with the Avengers are fine. They work great, but I prefer the standalone movies if they're well done. And if you're going to do a team movie, start out with a team.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I wouldn't mind like maybe seeing another hero show up in like a Wonder Woman 2 or an Aquaman 2 or something, like maybe a one-on-one pair up. But I definitely don't want another like 6-hero Justice League movie at this point.
I think that's exactly right. You can probably find a good way to do it, sort of like how Ant-Man turned from Ant-Man to Ant-Man and the Wasp, where it just basically turned from a one-hander into a two-hander. You could maybe do something like if you really wanted to introduce Hawkman, just picking a random DC character, maybe you make a Wonder Woman and Hawkman movie, and it's like these two characters bouncing off each other. I don't know if that one specifically would be any good, but you know what I mean. Like you don't need to jump straight to giant team. You can just have a primary feature player.
Right.
Agreed. Well, I'll be in the seat for Aquaman 2. I know that much. Well, whether that will happen or not, we'll have to see. But I'm glad we enjoyed this one as much as we did. Guys, are we ready for our second movie of the week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to switch gears then. And nope, I'm avoiding the puns for this one too. I'm going to be as pun-free as possible. But we're going to talk about Mary Poppins Returns, y'all.
Yeah.
I made a Guardian reference instead. I hope that's okay. As I mentioned before we talked to Aquaman, we're going to be jumping right into spoilers on this one. So if you haven't seen Mary Poppins Returns yet and you're concerned about spoilers, if you're watching live, come back in about 20 minutes. If you're watching, on digital tape delay, use the show notes, time index, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. You know what to do. But here we go. Our discussion of Mary Poppins Returns. All right, so Jim, give us just a little bit of brief info for this one.
Sure.
I think a lot of people are fucking
Sure.
familiar with this already, but
Come on, man.
then
If you don't know
we'll
Mary
jump in.
Poppins by now, we need to talk. Seriously.
Wasn't that a song? If you don't know Mary by now.
No, it's not a song. Anyway, we had to wait was this over 50 years we waited for the sequel to like
I said like 54 or something.
Yeah, it's like 54 years. The original Mary Poppins came out in 1964. I was just a little boy. And now here it is, 2018. We've had Mary Poppins Returns. It's I would call it like both a sequel and a remake, actually. Or, you know, I don't know if you'd call it a reboot, but it felt like a remake, but it was a sequel to the story. It has a story continuation. So this one has the story of Mary Poppins. She comes back after her original visit. The magic nanny Mary Poppins returns to help the Banks siblings and Michael's children through a tough time in their lives. So this one has Emily Blunt starring as Mary Poppins, Lin-Manuel Miranda as Jack, not a chimney sweep this time, but a lamplighter. I forget exactly what the term was. We have to look that up. Help me out, guys. There was a term for it in the movie, which I really liked, and now I forgot it. Ben Whishaw is the grown-up Michael. Emily Mortimer is the grown-up Jane. And they've now grown up. There's the brother and sister. Ben has some kids now. And they're the kids who are integral to the story. There's John, Georgie, and Annabelle, I think her name is. I'm not sure.
But not the cursed doll.
Not the cursed doll, Annabelle.
Okay.
Now that's the movie I would see.
And we've got a lot of guest performances, surprise guest performances, I guess, that show up in here. Their names are in IMDb, so it's not a spoiler. And we're going to talk spoilers anyway. But I enjoyed this movie a little bit more than I thought I would. This is a musical. It's got all new musical selections. There are some of the old musical motifs that are kind of carried into the soundtrack here, but not super prominently. They do pop up, but like Supercalifragilistic and Let's Go Fly a Kite, and we know a spoonful of sugar,
feed the birds,
and but this movie to me mostly was a delight. I enjoyed the movie. I love the feel of this movie. I like the actors that are in this movie. The thing that gets me, this movie felt to me almost like if you've seen the Paddington and Paddington 2 movies, and not just because it was set in London with British actors. That's
starring Ben Whishaw.
And
Ben Whishaw giving the voice. But it definitely had that like gentle throwback feel, of a movie. And I enjoyed that they went that way with this movie. They didn't try to make it, not edgy's not the right word, but they didn't try to modernize it too much. The movie is set in the past, right? Because it's only one generation removed from the original. So it's probably set, they're still lighting lamps in London, gas lamps. So I'm not sure the year is known, but I enjoyed this one a lot. How about you guys?
Yeah. I liked this one. It's hard. It's really hard to make a sequel to something that's considered an all-time classic, because if the sequel is not an instant all-time classic, it's technically subpar to the original, and that almost feels unfair. So I want to kind of get that out of the way. I didn't love this one, but I still had a good enough time with it, and I know that it's unfair that I'm comparing it as heavily to the original. I think what works really well is, first of all, I think Emily Blunt is really good in this. And I think that she captures some of Mary's vanity in a very interesting way. And I thought that made the character a little bit more dynamic. I really liked Ben Whishaw. He is one of those guys who provides just not just in Paddington, but it just there's something about his tenor that that provides a lot of heart, that just makes something feel very sincere and very heartwarming. And I think he provides that. I'm a huge Lin-Manuel Miranda fan. He did fine here. I think he, you know, part of it was having to deal with that very put upon Cockney accent, which was a throwback to the Dick Van Dyke character's accent. What's so nice about this movie and so sweet about it is that it has a lot of things going for it very technically, like the choreography, to the transition to the CGI, to the animation, to like the dance sequences. All of those things are very technically sound. What it's missing, unfortunately, is some of the spark, some of the magic that the original one had. The songs are good, but they're not as good, except for there's one song, a more poignant song that I thought, you know, really clicked. But I think the most damning thing about this movie for me is that when you put it side by side with the original Mary Poppins, it's got the same plot, like almost to the beat. Like it's almost the exact same story all the way through. It feels like this movie is so in such reverence of the source material that it didn't want to make anything new for fear of breaking something. And as a result, they just made kind of a weak photocopy. And so I think if you go and you watch this, you'll have a good enough time. I think there's not a lot of movies that are as without guile as this is, and that's nice. But I'm not like rushing. I'm not rushing to go see it again, nor am I like screaming at everyone that you got to go see it.
Yeah, I'm pretty glad I only had to sit through this movie once. And that probably sounds harsh, but Will, it's for the same reason that you just mentioned. You know, if I want to see the first Mary Poppins movie, I'll put it in my fucking, you know, like movie collection on iTunes or whatever and watch Mary Poppins. Like, this was the same movie all over again. It's so paint by the numbers, literally, almost. Like, it's just ridiculous how much of a retread it is. And Jim, I feel bad because I know that you really love this one a lot, and it had a lot of the magic of the original for you. But also, too, I mean, maybe part of it is that, like, I'm not a huge fan of the original Mary Poppins movie anyway. I don't have that, like, glowing nostalgia heart about it. When I saw it when I grew up, I thought it was silly and dumb. As an adult, though, I really appreciate the original movie. I just don't think it had the same magic for me. And so coming into this movie, I don't know if his expectations or what, but I was kind of like, okay, like, this is a chance to, like, level reset in a way. Like, we've got Emily Blunt, who I love, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who I love, you know, like Ben Whishaw, who I also love. I'm like, Emily Mortimer, I'm like, there's all these great pieces. Now let's do something really interesting with them, but let's do something new. Like, let's reinvent Mary a little bit. Like, and man, having this set with the original kids as adults, as opposed to maybe making a chance and have Mary Poppins show up in, I don't know, London in the 70s or something. Like, they had a really cool opportunity, I think, to do something a little more outside the box with Mary. And I think you could have maintained a lot of the original magic and some of the stylistic things while taking some chances that they just didn't take. And so, I don't know, like, this movie just really didn't do a ton for me, I guess. Visually, it was cool. Some good, you know, animation stuff. I liked some of that transitioning as well. I got to tell you, though, as much as I love Lin-Manuel Miranda, I'm getting really tired of him, like, jerking himself off, like, in everything I see him in lately. Like, oh, no, now we got to have the Lin-Manuel Miranda rap, like, out of nowhere, when that's not even, like, the musical stylings of that time. And I guess not that it has to be because it's a fantasy film, but it's getting to the point now where wherever I see him point up, you know, come up in something, I'm like, oh, wait for it. We got to have that Lin-Manuel rap. You know, it's coming. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I don't know. I'm being super negative. I liked Emily Blunt. I thought she was a great, you know, stand-in for Julie Andrews here. One thing that was interesting to me, not to take away from Emily Blunt, but I was curious, we're in spoilers, it's all spoilers, why no Julie Andrews? And so I did a little research, and Julie Andrews gave an interview to Variety, and they asked her, "Why aren't you in this movie?" And she said, "Out of respect for Emily Blunt."
I got trapped under the ocean.
She was sitting out of the movie. She didn't want to take away from Emily Blunt. She didn't want to steal the show with some cheap cameo that pops up. Like, she wanted it to be the Emily Blunt show. And so I don't know. I respect that. I think that was a cool move. Do we want to see another Emily Blunt Mary Poppins movie, guys? What do you think?
I don't know. I know, and I understand your criticisms of, not being a fan of the first movie, notwithstanding, this was pretty much, that's why I said up front, this wasn't just a sequel. This was practically a remake of the original movie, just under the guise of, we've gone another generation further, and she comes back and does the same exact thing she did in the first movie. But for me, it was like that story and the wonder of that story was so great. I wanted to see what these actors, for me as a movie fan, I wanted to see what these actors could do with that material. And yeah, it was a retread, but I thought it was a well-made retread in terms of the story. I didn't know what to expect coming into this. I didn't know if they would change the story around. I'm glad they didn't. But like you said, Will, maybe they were afraid they were going to break something. I'm glad they didn't fucking break it, because I don't think they did. Even with the Hamilton break part of that song, which kind of made my eyes roll a little bit, that it was so tonally out of place. But like I said, I enjoyed seeing, whether it's nostalgia, call it whatever you want, I enjoyed seeing kind of a throwback movie made. Even though it followed the same story. And I can see where, it probably isn't going to excite today's, moviegoers that don't have the same reverence for the first one that I did. Although I say that, and as we were watching the movie, like 3 or 4 seats down from me, there was a mom and her young son, and they're watching the movie, and she's kind of bouncing along. She's loving it. And the little boy is like, toward the end of the movie, he was like, we had these like recliner seats where the foot kind of goes up. He's sitting on the edge of that recliner seat foot, like leaning over at the screen, like totally enwrapped by what's going on the screen, which was great to see. But I don't know if that's going to be the reaction to most people, and especially most young people, seeing a movie that's like almost plays like a period piece, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, like, because if you look down the other side of the row we were in, there was
that's just where you were.
there was the 10-year-old girl who kept pulling out her cell phone every 5 minutes because she was bored to fucking tears by this movie.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. Brad, you were sitting on the didn't like it side of the theater, and Jen was on the like it side. You guys should have swapped.
Okay.
One thing that I think you got to give this film, or at least that I do, is that everybody involved, from the cast to director Rob Marshall, everybody was passionate about this. I got to see a Q&A with the 2 lead cast members, with Rob Marshall and with one of the writers, I think Dave McGee. And there's this, just, I mentioned it before, reverence. There's just this passion. There's just this love of the material that you could tell everyone brought into that production. And I think I would be okay with seeing a sequel out of these people, because I think the first go round was trying to get back into that same rhythm, telling a familiar story a different way. I mean, hell, there's some of the Force Awakens did that, sort of like telling a similar story, but with a new cast to sort of reset things. What I would like to see now would be another movie of this type in a few years, where they say, okay, well, now that we've done Mary Poppins again, what else can we do in this world? What else can Mary Poppins do? It doesn't have to be anything too dramatic. It can still be kind of saccharine sweet or whatever. But I think that there's different stories to tell other than kids having to manage money, going on an animated sequence and then doing aerial, flying something in the air at the end. I think there's a different way you can tell this story. But I guess for my money, I would say if you really want to watch this type of movie and you really only have like time for one, I would actually just recommend renting Paddington 2, because I think that the feelings that I got out of Paddington 2 were what I think Mary Poppins Returns was going for.
Yeah, I was, like I said, there were moments in here that absolutely delighted me. It was great to see Dick Van Dyke hit the screen again in that last scene. That to me, that was a big surprise. I didn't know, since we weren't seeing Julie Andrews, I figured we weren't going to see Dick Van Dyke either. It was great seeing Angela Lansbury pop up as the balloon lady, because the first movie had the bird lady, right? Not played by Angela Lansbury, but for them to kind of make a nod to that role was, I thought, really, really good. The only thing I could have done without in this movie was the Meryl Streep cousin Topsy part. I thought that was
that scene turned this movie turtle for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know, man. Meryl Streep showing up in some of these movies, like the last Mamma Mia movie, and in this movie is these kind of like stunt casting performances by Meryl Streep. I'm not really that much into these.
Well, I'll at least give her like a pass for like her appearance in Mamma Mia, because it was
she was
sequel to the role she originated.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. This, like, if you cut that entire scene out of this movie,
it's better.
It's it doesn't affect the overall plot. And I mean, you can technically make the same claim of the and now I'm going to forget the character, but the uncle from the first Mary Poppins, who has a similar role, similar position, if you will, at a similar spot in the film. But yeah, absolutely. Like, the song wasn't that great. Like, its role in the narrative wasn't that great. Like, give me in terms of songs, give me The Place Where the Lost Things Go, which is an absolute like heartbreaker. Or give me that. I mean, I had a better time, I think, than the two of you with the song that was done in the about judging a book by its cover in the animated section.
I thought the song was really good, except for that one section. There was one section that I wish they hadn't done it that way.
I was on board until the rap, and then I was like, "Oh, Jesus, really? Come on."
Some people probably loved it.
But the topsy-turvy, like, I have to agree with you. And here's the thing. That scene is so superfluous, right? It's like, it's almost like they're like, oh my God, guys, Meryl Streep wants to be involved with this. How can we work Meryl in? Well, it better involve a song. Quick, throw some random ideas in a hat for a side quest they can do. Oh, broken bowl. Okay, there we go. We never follow up on the broken bowl. We never get it back. Right? Like, what was the point in the story? Like, oh, mom's priceless bowl that apparently wasn't priceless after all. Like, it was so shoehorny, and it was corny in the process of doing it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are, again, I like this movie a lot, probably better than you guys to some degree, but definitely not a perfect movie. And it's like you said, I think it's they're treading dangerous waters when you're trying to make a sequel or a remake, or both in this case, of a very classic, iconic historical film.
Yeah. So hey, it was still sweet. Like, there's at least that. Like, it's kind of a shitty time for a lot of people right now. So just being able to see something that's just kind of just this buoyant, like, there is value in that.
I agree.
So I want to ask a question. It seems like I'm closing every segment with a question, but whatever. If we were to get a Mary Poppins Returns sequel, would this be more interesting if Mary Poppins, like, I don't know, came to a family in 2020 or something that was having trouble? Like, seeing Mary Poppins like a fish out of water in a modern world, like her values against modern values. Would that be a well to go to that could be interesting here?
Yeah, I mean, the passage of time between the first two was just one generation, and both of the films were basically, for modern audiences, are both antiquity, right? Like, you know, when you're talking about the 1910s versus the 1930s, plus or minus a decade or whatever, you know, I think that what we're dealing with is like, or whenever it happened to be, I don't fucking know. But you know, like it all feels kind of samey. But you put Mary Poppins in a modern era, or you put her in hell the 1980s, you know, like dealing with like the punk revolution in London. Like I think there's a lot of places you could still have a good sweet movie while also exploring sort of different people other than just like kind of generic, boring, super white people in London.
Yeah, I mean, it could work. As long as it didn't become just a steady string of fish out of water gags. I mean, that'll work for 5 or 10 minutes. But I hope that, you know, they'd have to give it a good story to carry it. And yeah, I just want to mention one more thing. The movie wasn't really comfortable in doing a complete throwback movie. There's a dance sequence near the end, the Lamplighters dance and song, which I thought was really well done, except for some weird reason, they had BMX like bikes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Going up ramps and shit. Like, what the hell was that all about? Oh, we better throw some BMX stunts in there to keep the young kids.
I felt like I was tripping a little light fantastic during that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy. Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, does that give Mary Poppins leeway to fly back up for another 30 years?
Another 50 years, whatever. Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, then we have one more
if either of you guys make it to see that movie in another 30 to 50 years, like, I don't know, come back in time and let me know how it is or something.
At this point, if the next one is in 54 years and I'm still somehow alive, I guess I could play the damn near decrepit, like a banker who like springs to life for one song and dance number. Like, I think that's the best I could hope for.
Jim, I actually think you're going to be the one that's most spry at that point in time.
Oh, yeah?
You'll still be around. Yeah, because you're like, I don't know, your genes are like 20 years younger than
I'll be dancing. I'll be the dancing Dick Van Dyke.
You'll be the dancing Dick Van Dyke. Totally.
That works. I love it.
Dancing Dick. Just stop it, dancing Dick.
I like it when your dick dances. Anyway, so we have another movie to talk about. Are we ready? I'd say switch gears because we're about to talk about a car movie, but I promise not to make really bad puns. So are you guys well prepared to move on to our final movie of the week?
I have to say that I love that every single one of your transitions makes a bad pun and then says, "But I promised." No, I love it.
He can't help himself, Will. He cannot. It's in his DNA. He can't help himself.
I'm pretty sure it literally is like guanine, thurnine, punanine, whatever. Like,
it's in his DNA. I swear I could taste it.
Wow.
Okay, I think that's our that's our sound drop.
That's the puns right there.
That's something, all right.
I love making your mouth drop like that.
And I thought it was all the pineapple. Oh goodness. All right. Hey, we're going to talk about Bumblebee. Speaking of things that are yellow. So if you haven't seen Bumblebee yet, Jim, you're making the face. I had to transition somehow. We want to respect you. If you haven't seen Bumblebee yet, I'd say out of the 3 movies we're talking about this week, Bumblebee is probably the one where some people might be a little bit on the fence, given the train wreck of the Transformers franchise up till now. So if you've not yet seen Bumblebee, we're going to go full on spoilers right away. So you may want to step away for 20-25 minutes and then come on back for the end of the show where we do some very quick plugs to wrap up. But here we go. Our discussion of Bumblebee. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message that we're going to talk about Bumblebee right now. So I did not know this at the time, guys, because I tend to, I don't know. I think I'm the reverse of you guys. Like, I don't tend to read a lot about movies before they come out. I try not to even see trailers unless I'm in the movie theater when they happen to play in front of me. So I had no idea that Bumblebee was directed by the director of Kubo and the Two Strings, which I also loved. That, of course, being Travis Knight. So, you know, like after I saw the movie, I'm like, man, who directed that? Like, made sense. But basically, the story of Bumblebee, straight from IMDb, in 1987, on the run, Bumblebee finds refuge in a junkyard on Earth in a small California beach town. Charlie, on the cusp of turning 18 and trying to find her place in the world, discovers Bumblebee, battle-scarred and broken. And then they have Bumblebee, Haley, you know, adventures together. This has Haley Steinfeld in it, John Cena, and George Lenborg Jr. As kind of our three main people in the film. Of course, there are some other actors here too, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of them. But basically, this film is a little bit of a comedy, a little bit of like a deep-seated daddy issue emotional film. We got robot action going on. We got military antics going on. We got a little bit of the dirt bike kid thrown into this film. I don't know, Will, if you ever saw that movie growing up. It had the kid from A Christmas Story in it. He finds a magic dirt bike and has like this amazing friendship with it, sort of like Charlie and Bumblebee, except it can only move its handlebars. It couldn't like transform into other vehicles.
Flash its light. Don't forget.
It could flash its light. It could also flash its light. But I gotta say, going into Bumblebee, I don't know. I was excited based off of the trailer. I'm like, okay, you know what? This could be like a turnaround for the Transformers franchise, but it probably won't be. It looks good in the trailer, which means it's probably going to be a steaming pile of shit. We've seen this movie twice now, and I think I loved it even more the second time. I am absolutely in love with this film. It has its issues. Boy, does it have issues. But I think it captures so much of the like just original magic of the Transformers, you know, animated show from the 80s, while also kind of like giving us some of those old 80s films where like, you know, a young kid like finds something magical like E.T. or an alien or whatever, you know what I mean? And cool antics ensue. I like the setup of this film. I think that the emotional stakes, while maybe not high in terms of Bumblebee and what's going on with him and the other Transformers, the stuff between Bumblebee and Charlie is really heartfelt and worked really well for me. A Transformers movie fucking made me cry twice. And that says something because I knew it was coming the second time around and it still made me cry. So this one was a huge win for me. Some great songs in this one. The soundtrack is awesome. I think I own all of the songs individually, but I still bought the soundtrack anyway, just to have them in like one collected place in my music library. Yeah, so I loved this. Will, what did you think?
So I went into this one a little more optimistic only because, like you, I think the first, 5 movies are, what's the polite way of saying steaming piles of dog shit?
Effervescently vaporing.
Will,
Yes,
you put all
mounds.
5 movies in the same trash bin?
All 5 of them are in the same trash bin. Some of them are at the bottom of the trash bin, and some of them are sitting on top of them at the bottom of the trash bin. They're not all circling the bottom. No, I disliked all 5 of the original movies. Every single one of them was excruciating. And whenever it came up, like, that's one of the things I would always talk to you guys about it. Just sort of like, man, like one of the worst things about like doing live reviews of popular films is like, you know, for every, you know, movie that you love that comes across, and, you know, every so often you have to review a Transformers movie. So
Transformers movies are like the touchstone of this podcast, right? It's one of the touchstones. Like every year it seems like we watch a Transformers movie that Will hates. So we have to put him through this. We have to put him through this ringer.
it's like hazing. But one of the things that made me sort of optimistic about it was I follow a video producer, writer, whatever. Her name is Lindsay Ellis. I follow her on Twitter. I follow her on YouTube. She does some of the best like deep dive film and literary analysis out there. Check her out. But she did this. She's a huge Transformers fan, and she did this long series called The Whole Plate, based off of the line from the first Transformers movie, "I ate the whole plate," where she deep dive different issues like misogyny, masculinity, homophobia in the Transformers movie. So she's invested in this franchise, but she had huge issues with all of them. So she got out of like one of the screenings that was like a week earlier, and she's like, "Guys, I'm kind of in love with the new Transformers movie, and I don't know what to make of that." And after that, I'm just like, okay, I've got to see this thing. I got to see this thing. And I'm right there with you, Brad. This could almost be my review of all the movies, this thing. I didn't love it, but I very much liked it. And the fact that I very much liked it compared to everything else that we've seen from this franchise is a huge step up.
Makes it seem awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a cheesy movie. There's some real cornball stuff that happens here, but it's good cheesy. Like, it is what the Transformers cartoon in the 80s was. Like, you can't watch that without kind of like lovingly rolling your eyes, if that makes sense. Like, you don't do it out of hate. You do it out of just like, oh, that joke was corny, but I still like, I laughed despite myself. And that's how I felt about this. I felt like a lot of the setup and the payoffs, you could see coming a mile away, but you still enjoyed them when they happened. The music was fun, even if like the soundtrack maybe beat you over the head a little bit with the 80s stuff. Haley Steinfeld and Bumblebee's relationship felt like a real friendship relationship. There's really only one line I disliked in the entire movie, and it was that final line that referenced the other Transformers movies. "Oh, you could have been that car the whole time." Like, and the only reason I disliked it was because it reminded me that those other fucking movies existed.
Right.
Yeah, this is a good movie. Check it out.
Well, I hated that line too, because like I was a Volkswagen Beetle owner when I was very young. It was one of my first cars that I ever paid for myself and drove. And it was a shit box, but I loved that car, and I love Volkswagen. Yeah, I had two of them. I made one working car out of two heaps of junk, just like Haley Steinfeld's character in this movie. And I'm like, so the whole movie, she didn't like the Volkswagen? Like, I don't know. It was weird. Like, I thought she loved that Volkswagen Beetle. And then at the end, she's like, oh, she didn't say this, but like, fuck that Volkswagen Beetle. You could have been a fucking Camaro the whole time.
Hold on. To be fair, he didn't turn into an old, beat up, decrepit Camaro. He turned into like a brand spanking new, fucking beautiful, shiny Camaro. So I think it was more in reference to like him being able to look brand new and amazing, as opposed to like, oh, you could have been a Camaro. Camaros are cooler.
They didn't portray her as a material girl the whole movie until that one line. And then it's like, oh, you could have been a Camaro. Anyway,
it doesn't matter that it was the Camaro itself, like, versus the Volkswagen for me. It matters because at that exact moment, it took me out of the movie and reminded me that the other movies exist. Because that was a reference to the fact that he's a Camaro during the Transformers movie,
I really like this movie way more than the last couple, at least. I think I liked, the first one or two Transformers movie until they really kind of went downhill and became like crappy CGI bash fests, and that kind of made no sense. This movie felt like a totally different movie than those. First of all, it focused on character, which the other movies didn't really do, and this proves in my mind something that I've been saying is you got to get the characters right if you're going to have a story, right? And Haley Steinfeld's character, I thought, was great. She was really likable as a lead character. A non-typical teen female, you know what I mean? It's kind of breaking stereotypes, and I thought that was awesome. She was a gearhead, and of course she had, you got to have the daddy issues in there. Every character seems to have the daddy issues, which is a pet peeve of mine. But she was a likable character. We focused a little bit more on just one of the Transformers, Bumblebee in this case, which is probably the most human emoting of the Transformers anyway. And I
which
love
is
that.
interesting because he has no voice, right? He has to use music to communicate.
Yeah, which got a little corny, but you know, I like that concept. I don't know if they hit a home run with it every time here, but yeah, I mean the soundtrack was fun. The throwback to the 80s was fun to see, although you know that nostalgia button gets pushed a lot in stuff these days. I don't know whether it's just the audience for these movies has a fondness for like the 80s as they grew up, so that's kind of a nostalgia sweet spot for if you took the audience, all of the audience, and you looked at kind of the nostalgia of like when they grew up, the 80s would be kind of that sweet spot. But it's also when the Transformers cartoon was popular. Is that right, Brad? When was that Transformers cartoon?
In the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s. So, yeah. I really like this movie. I mean, it has a pretty standard plot. You know, bad Transformers against good Transformers, and the good Transformers are trying to find a place to, you know, a home to live because their home is destroyed. I liked it. We saw it twice. I liked it both times. And yeah, for those reasons, like I said, character, I think, way over plot in this one for me. Yeah,
I gotta say, it was so refreshing for me to finally be able to tell like which Transformer is which Transformer, like in a fight. Especially like the scene at the beginning on Cybertron where we have a lot of Transformers around, right? Like if it had been the regular Michael Bay style, they'd all just looked like one big pile of gnashing metal. But like, you know, even without their iconic designs, like just from a color palette standpoint, like, you know, they were predominantly one color with accent colors. They weren't like all fucking chrome with little bits of hints of color here and there. So just made it really easy, especially later in the film where like, you know, Bumblebee is fighting with like the Angela Bassett character. I think it was Shatter. And then the other one whose name I didn't quite catch. Obviously there's only 3 Transformers. So it's like, well, we know B's yellow. The other 2 must be evil, but it's like, which evil one is he fighting at that point? Like the blue one or the red one, you know, the girl or the boy. And so that was great. And man, I don't know about you, Will, but seeing those Gen 1 Transformers on Cybertron just made my heart so happy. Like when Soundwave steps out and he's all like, Soundwave. And then like later on, like Ravage comes out of the cassette deck and transforms. I was like 5 again. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
That was the exact moment. Because like in this movie, and you're absolutely right, like for the first time in a Transformers movie, I could tell who all of the non-Bumblebee, non-Optimus Prime Transformers were in the middle of a fight at any given time. Whoever was doing what, like they were very clear, very easy to see. But especially Soundwave, even though he was just there for just a moment, and this has nothing to do with the movie as a product, but what it has to do with as a nostalgia property in terms of like getting its core material right. As soon as Soundwave talked, I knew who I was listening to. I knew what was about to pop out of his chest. I knew where he stood within the lore of the fight. Everything was just like, you're right. I was transformed back to 5 years old again. I loved the amount of care. This felt like, and this is probably unfair of me to Michael Bay, but you know, big shrug. But this feels like the first Transformers movie that embraced its source material as opposed to feeling like indignant of it, if that makes sense. Like I always felt like Michael Bay's like has this like, and you see it with the way he treats the Shia LaBeouf character, with the way he treats a lot of characters. He almost seems to have this thing where he wants to be the guy giving the nerds the swirlies, like and that's the way he treats his character, like his non-alpha male characters in these movies. And so it always felt like he didn't like the fan base that was a bunch of like, you know, kids like watching transforming cars. Like that's, you know, he doesn't like the inner nerd in all of us. So here we've got Travis Knight, who gets why we fell in love with these stupid transforming car robot things. This was, as you know, as we've got here, Eric's Reloaded in chat says Bumblebee was a love letter to 80s fans. It absolutely was. It felt like the first of these movies that absolutely loved its source material.
But the flip side of that, and here's what's both interesting and sad to me at the same time. Both times we saw this movie coming out, I heard people comment, boy, they sure didn't have much budget for this movie. The Transformers looked so low budget and terrible. Even someone who, I don't know if he's still in the chat, but someone here earlier, and if he wants to comment, he can. I won't name names. But, you know, commented on Facebook, like how crappy the Transformers looked. And, you know, and I think that's because, like, it is a throwback to their 80s designs. They're giving them their very iconic look, not those super, like, crazy designs from Michael Bay that made them look like super, super futuristic to the point of not being able to really recognize which Transformer was which. So I almost wonder, like, did we go too far in making them look like Gen 1 Transformers? I personally say no, but I don't know that, like, your average movie audience who wasn't plugged into the 80s would have that same opinion.
Here's my thought on that. And I think we saw the same thing happen in video games. There's this thing that happens in design where when you're designing characters, when you're designing worlds, that you can put so many designs on top of each other. You can over-design something to the point of it being more complex or more realistic or whatever, but you lose things like silhouette and simplicity and color palettes. I think about in the video game pantheon, there was this stretch sort of in the to put it in this context, like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era of games, where everything felt like a hyper-realistic brown military shooter, to the point where everything looked technically good, but it was drab and unremarkable. Whereas the stuff that I think is more iconic and stands the test of time is stuff like we see in, like, Smash Brothers, which just came out, which is, you know, the main character, I guess, of the story mode of Smash Brothers is Kirby, who is just a pink ball with shoes and a smiley face on him. But his silhouette, his design, his color palette, while it's simple, it's remarkably well designed and it stands out and it's memorable. That's what I feel about these Transformer characters. I can recognize the silhouette of the characters individually. I can recognize their color palettes, the way they moved, in ways that the over-designed Michael Bay era Transformers didn't quite do for me. So yeah, maybe they're more simplistic, but I think simple's better.
Jim, how about you? Because you didn't have the 80s nostalgia Transformers thing like we did. So when you look at the designs of, like, the Michael Bay 5 film Transformers versus these, does this feel like a lazy step down for you, or how does it factor in?
No, I think this movie is not focusing on necessarily, like, making the look of the Transformers be as edgy as possible, you know, for the gearheads that are watching these movies. And that may be to the detriment, though, of this franchise. And I love this movie compared to the other ones. I love this movie. But if you look at, like, how it's doing at the box office, this might be the lowest one, you know, of all of them at the end of the day. I don't know. I don't know what so they injected more heart into this movie. They injected better characters into this movie. They, in your eyes, they kind of simplified the design and brought it back to what it originally was. I wonder if all those things are actually seen as detriments to the franchise in some fans' eyes. Like, maybe they like the giant, you know, more alien looking machines bashing it out for, you know, 125 minutes versus a story that has real heart and real characters. I don't know. Or maybe the last movie, which was The Last Night, which was terrible, has already tanked the series to a degree, and now the fans, the fans of Transformers are slow to come back to it, even though this movie's really good.
This movie has a lot of things going against it from a box office perspective, and none of which is necessarily fair to the movie, but whatever. Like, I think the sixth movie in a franchise is always going to be a bit of an uphill climb just because fatigue sets in at a certain point, especially when the previous iteration was, I believe, the least well received, just in terms of by
a factor of 2.
This is also a prequel featuring only one character by the title, Bumblebee, as opposed to all of the Transformers. So it's always like, oh, well, this is a side story. I don't need to watch this. And also, it was released in December, which is not necessarily like the same as dropping a movie in the middle of February or whatever, but it's not it wasn't put in the summer tentpole position. And so it had to compete with Aquaman. It had to compete with the fact that people are dealing with other stuff over the holidays and aren't going to go see this and Mary Poppins and Aquaman. I mean, we did, obviously, for this show, but we're not the typical fan. I think if this had come out like early summer, like give this or maybe even like a late April release, I think it would have done a lot better. But whatever.
Besides the timing, and you're right, Will, you're absolutely right. The timing is unfortunate, but besides that, the factors of the movie, like the look of Bumblebee, the fact that there aren't more Transformers, the fact maybe people have heard there isn't as much battle in this movie as there are in some of the other movies. I wonder if there's a segment of moviegoers that'll be turned off by that, even though the story and characters we got here are superior in every way.
It feels
so. Yeah. So here's my question. Third movie. Obviously, we have franchise fatigue with Transformers, and I think that's affected a lot of people. In fact, several friends I spoke to, I was like, saw Bumblebee a second time, still loved it. They're like, oh God, I can't even decide if I want to see it once, but if you saw it twice, I'm gonna go see it. And then they saw it, and they're like, holy crap, that was amazing. So maybe that's a good sign. Here's my question. I promise I have one. If this movie were like a soft reboot of the franchise in a way, like if we forgot that the earlier ones existed and we treated this as the first one, maybe we have another movie set in 1990 with Optimus Prime and a couple other Transformers are there by now. Like, would we continue to watch Transformers movies sort of on the smaller scale? You've only got a few Transformers involved, more emotional story. Would you keep going to the box office for more Transformers films like Bumblebee?
They don't even have to be necessarily small scale for me. Like, what I liked about this so well was this was a well-written movie. And I think that's one of the things that I didn't experience with the previous ones before. The writer on this, we have one writer, which is, for a blockbuster, never happens. Usually it's like 8 people in committee hacking something together. But Christina Hodson, I mean, also nice that a female writer writing for a female lead. What's so neat about this movie is whether it was a small scale movie or whether it was like 87 Transformers all bashing their heads against each other, this was a well-written movie. And so if they were to do this as a soft reboot, almost given the exact same answer to as I gave with Aquaman, like, I feel like these are better foots forward for the franchises than what we've had in the past. And so I want to reward filmmakers kind of getting it right. So if that Bumblebee 2 came out, or if they resurrected Cliff Jumper for my poor broken heart and gave me a Cliff Jumper, he was my favorite Transformer as a kid, so that kind of sucked. But if we were to see anything else from this, whether it be just Bumblebee or a new, Transformers Reborn or whatever it happens to be, I would go see it because this reinstilled all of the good faith that the franchise has absolutely stripped out of me over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm with you, Brad. I think that I would like to see this continue kind of in this vein, even if they weren't scaled down so much. I mean, they could... I could see the next movie being the Transformers coming to Earth to try to, reestablish a home base and conflict with humans, obviously, right? And then, maybe of course you got to throw a Decepticon or two in there. Which reminds me, one of the best lines of this film was, I think by John Cena. I think he had one of the best lines. He's like, I mean, they are called Decepticons after all. Are you not thinking of that? Like,
yes.
So
they're literally called Decepticons.
We should trust them.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see how if this movie, if they think they can like make it work to get another movie going. Because the budgets for these movies are not small. So,
well, I think I'm right there with you guys. Like, if this were the first of a new generation of Transformers movie, we'll call it Transformers Gen 2, the movie, or something. I don't know. I would be so on board. Like, I would love a series of movies. And I never thought I'd say I want more Transformers movies, but now I do. Like, showing them setting up their new, base on Earth, and the Decepticons finding their way to Earth, and, the battle beginning. God, I would see the crap out of those movies. And looking in the chat, Mike Lovins, Magic Mike is here. Hey, Mike. He says he loved Bumblebee. He says, did you talk about the proposed animated movie that takes place on Cybertron? Mike, we haven't, but I would be all over that. Definitely.
Didn't know anything about that.
I think all I've read about that is that I think it's very, very, very early in development. I could be wrong, but I mean, if it has the heart of this, like, give me 87 more of these. I don't know.
Question for you Transformers experts out there. So is Cybertron, I forget, I've seen the movie twice, I should know. Is Cybertron actually destroyed, or were the Transformers, the Autobots, driven from Cybertron?
Both. Cybertron has been ravaged to the point, I mean, it's a battleground to the point that it's not like a sustainable planet anymore, but the Decepticons basically kicked the Autobots like off of Cybertron.
But it exists.
It does exist, and I think in the earlier movies there was this whole quest for like Optimus to like go back and reignite the all-spark heart of Cybertron and bring it back to life so they could go back, and that's why.
What about like a circular series where it all goes back to the beginning? That would be strange.
Eric makes a point here in the chat. He says Bay was obsessed with using the human characters to spearhead the movies, but this one was the most well-handled human-led Transformers film. I agree, and I think part of that is because Bumblebee was just as important as Charlie was. And earlier in the thread, Eric said something that I loved. He called it a girl and her dog movie. Absolutely. But in this case, it was a girl and her Transformer. And I just think that's such an apt way of putting it. So, I mean, it sounds like
it was lean on Pete, except if Pete was Charlie, the girl, and Charlie in Lean on Pete was Charlie. I don't know. That's weird.
Lean on B?
Or Pete was Bumblebee and Charlie was Pete. I don't know, whatever.
Okay. It's the relationship between human and robot in this was for an emotional purpose and not for just a narrative purpose of we need human beings to propel the story so that we have an audience surrogate. I think that makes all the difference. If you're going to write this type of relationship, write it with care. And they absolutely did. Or I guess I say it was one writer. Christina Hodson very much did.
And check it out. We didn't need a fucking giant boobed supermodel leaning over a motorcycle to like sell this film.
Nope.
Although it's not doing as well at the box office, so maybe we did. I don't know.
Exactly.
But
maybe we did.
All I can talk about is like how much joy I got out of it. Like, there's a part of me that is like, if the fact that this one's not doing as well as those other just absolutely atrocious movies, and some of the reasons why some of that might be, there's a certain part of it that
makes me sad.
I don't want to think about because it really makes me sad when I do. But I do know that sadness was eroded and kind of washed away as I climbed to the top of the beam and dove into this movie.
Nice.
So, okay, so that's 3 movies that we've talked about here, like between Aquaman and Mary Poppins Returns and Bumblebee. And I feel like the question almost is begged to be asked. If we were to put all three of these in the ring, which one comes out as the winner for you? If you could recommend someone only go see one of these movies, what is it?
Wow. I mean, I enjoyed them all. I would hate to I enjoyed them all about the same.
Don't be a pussy. Pick one.
All right. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to say Mary Poppins Returns.
All right.
Right. Hands down for me, no question, Bumblebee.
And I guess technically I should say Aquaman to balance it out, but I'm not going to, because both Aquaman and Mary Poppins I had fun with, sort of despite the movie, whereas Bumblebee I had fun with because of the movie. So Bumblebee was the winner for me. I think that it's the despite some of its cheese and some of its faults, it's still quite an enjoyable movie. And it just gave me a huge grin as I walked out of the theater. So it was all Bumblebee for me.
So Bumblebee pins Mary Poppins.
Yeah, and Aquaman is counted out, disqualified.
He was disqualified.
Well, the other thing is, Mary Poppins and Aquaman, they were going to be the big giant movies this holiday season anyway. You know what I mean? Like, Bumblebee's the underdog.
I gotta say, Aquaman probably doesn't care that none of us picked it, since it's just absolutely like washing, everyone to shore at the box office right now.
Right.
Yep. And Michael Evans in the chat, I think we had come to this one as well, Mike. But he says possible show title, Aquabee Returns. I think that was one of the ones we were tossing around in the chat as well.
We had Bumble Poppins Man and Aqua Mary Bee and Mary Aqua Bumble.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up with some very quick plugs. And we'll just do it real quick. Jim, why don't you start us off? Was there anything else you saw over the holiday break that maybe you want to let our listeners know about?
I saw a lot of movies. I'm only going to pick one that I think is very accessible and I think should strike a chord with our audience, and that's Dumplin'. It's on Netflix. This is a movie that kind of knocked me over by surprise. It was, I was interested because it stars an actress named Danielle McDonald, who I loved in a movie called Patty Cakes, if you guys remember. Yeah. She's really good in that, and she's really good in this. She's with Jennifer Aniston in this. This movie is great. It's kind of it's coming of age story about an overweight girl in the South who is living in the shadow of her mom, who is a hometown beauty pageant queen, and she's trying to break the cycle. And there's some really surprising things in this. I don't want to spoil anything. There's some great sections in this movie. See it. It's available. If you don't have a Netflix account, borrow a friend's password and see the movie Dumplin'. And just one little tidbit, Danielle McDonald is in both big Netflix movies this week, both Dumplin' and Bird Box. So if you've seen those movies, you've seen Danielle McDonald.
Nice. I haven't seen Bird Box yet, but I did watch Dumplin' with you, and that was the day on our vacation that I had really terrible food poisoning. So I was curled up on the couch of our hotel room wanting to die. So the fact that I stayed awake and loved that movie as much as I did says something. I got to tell you, all the Dolly Parton music made me really, really happy. And I bought the soundtrack to the film. I was listening to it all day today, preparing lesson plans for work. I feel like I could put Jolene on repeat forever and be okay with that, which is weird. But it's great. So great plug, Jim.
Yep. Okay.
Will, how about you, my friend? What you got?
Man, Jim just reminded me, like, I kind of want to do like a movie marathon called the I'm calling it in my head the See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil
Hush,
and it would be Hush, A Quiet Place, Bird Box.
So what's is there a note, like, is there a bad touch movie We got to get another sense going
maybe
on.
Don't Breathe, just because maybe not necessarily the touch, but I know he's like feeling around a lot.
Yeah.
So the movie I want to recommend, it's a foreign language film, so feel free to tune out and not listen to me for the next minute if people don't like reading subtitles. But
what were you saying, Will? Sorry, I had a little thing.
It's an amazing one. It's on Amazon. You can rent it and watch it right now. It's called Good Manners, and the story is it's a Brazilian film. This nurse from Sao Paulo, she is hired by this wealthy woman who is pregnant, and she needs basically a nanny / nurse through the pregnancy and sort of post delivery. Well, the two form this like really cool bond between the two as you start to realize that something sinister might be brewing. This is 2 movies in one. It is a touching story about 2 people connecting, and then it shifts into a different movie about 2 other characters connecting. It is a supernatural movie. It is horror adjacent. It is, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but there is a furry paw and a full moon on the poster, so you can guess what this movie might be about. It's really good, guys. Like, it gave me a lot of the, like, Jim, especially, I think you would enjoy this one because of just some of the movies that you like. This feels like it's in the same wheelhouse as something like Let the Right One In or something like that. Just in
or Border.
With like, or Border, in that it deals with a supernatural story, but told basically through like the very human relationships that are part of it. It's called Good Manners. You can rent it on Amazon. The movie just came out earlier this year, and it is absolutely stellar.
Cool. I had seen the trailer for that one and kind of forgotten about it till you just brought it up. So I'm glad it's out.
Rock on. Well, I'm going to plug a movie that, I think it counts as a movie, sort of. We watched this on New Year's Eve with our friends Brian and Ron. We were staying in LA with them. And that is the new episode of Black Mirror that is as long as a movie called Bandersnatch. And it's a choose your own adventure interactive movie on Netflix. And if you're not familiar, Black Mirror is basically this show where it's like all about like the horrors of technology or like the weird, wondrous things of technology. It tells some really cool, poignant stories. Bandersnatch was a little crazy and out there, but it was so neat to like watch this in a group and like a scene plays out, and then like the main character is given a choice as to like what to have for breakfast: sugar puffs or frosted flakes. And that's the first choice. You get to start off choosing what he has for breakfast. And then later on, you get to decide things like, do you attack somebody? Do you keep your cool? And it was so awesome for me, like remembering those old choose your own adventure books I used to love, like turn to page 49 if you decide to attack the dragon. Very much like that. I haven't done it yet. We got the best ending. Someone out there has like mapped all the endings, and all of our choices led to what's considered the best, most poignant ending. But I kind of want to like go back and just spend 12 hours rewatching it and picking all the different choices and seeing what happens. That was fucking awesome. I would love more interactive movies like that.
So we made the right choice in Serial, is what you're saying.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept. This is a kind of a new concept. It's a very interactive kind of movie. I can't recall ever doing anything quite like it before, where the viewer gets to decide which path that the character actions follow and affect the outcome of the movie. So, this was really interesting. Although we did have to find a platform in which it worked, because it didn't work directly on some platforms. It didn't work on, for instance, it doesn't work on Apple TV, but
or Chromecast, or we had to watch it on their computer. Right. It works on like your mobile devices, like
or game platforms too. It works on game platforms. So if you watch a movie through PS4 or something, you can do it. Mm-hmm. But interesting.
It reminds me so much of the I'm going back to video games, but the Telltale video games, like The Walking Dead. or Game of Thrones or whatever. Like, just in that it's a visual novel where you get to choose your own adventure all the way through. And I don't know how well this would replicate to many other movie experiences like this. This one was remarkably meta about the actual experience of being interactive, and so you can't go to that well too many times. But at the same time, like this was a fun experiment. I had fun with it.
Yeah.
Well, if this sounds like fun to you, check it out. It's on Netflix right now. Black Mirror, Bandersnatch. If you haven't seen any other Black Mirror episodes, that's totally okay because they're all completely their own thing. I mean, there's some little nods here and there, but like the stories aren't really connected or anything. You don't have to like start at Black Mirror season 1, episode 1. However, you should watch season 3's San Junipero because it's fucking amazing. It's so wonderful. But maybe you don't watch San Junipero first because I feel like that sets the bar really high. I think it's the best episode of the series. So, go watch Black Mirror. But yeah, anyway. All right. Well, just a couple of housekeeping items in terms of our schedule for the next couple of weeks. Next week, we're coming at you. Will, I know you have a thing Tuesday. So
yeah, I think we'll do Wednesday the night. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And that's going to be awesome. That's going to be our top 10 films of 2018.
Yeah, finally.
I know. We've been waiting for this one for a while. We had to wait until we could see a bunch of the films, right? Because a whole bunch of them dumped like right at the end of the year.
All of them.
I know. So we'll say top 10 of 2018 asterisk. It could change before Oscar season. We never know. And then the week after that, we'll be doing our 2018 Movie Bears Podcast Awards, our superlatives, where we have categories like hottest bear scene, best hairy chest. What else? What are some other things? Best tearjerker moment. Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like most surprising performance, hottest on-screen moment, tearjerker, best. I think there's one called like the fuck yeah scene, which is like the best like action or moment that just makes you like kind of stand up in your seat and go, yeah, fuck yeah. They're not the same categories as you get at the Oscars because we'll be talking about those too at some point. So these are our own things. We'll roll out the red carpet. This is totally. You cannot miss it, award event of the season.
Yeah. And what we may put out a list of our superlatives, like just the categories on Facebook or something or Twitter. And then if you guys want to send in your own submissions and ideas, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So maybe be on the lookout for that. But that wraps us up for this week. Jim, if people want to get in touch with you between now and next week, how can they do so?
Oh, they can find my lonely Twitter account at JJP Out West. That's all one word, JJP Out West. Or find me under my name on Facebook, Jim Pugliafico.
Awesome. And Will, how about you?
Look for me on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. You can find me on every other social media platform like YouTube or Letterboxd. Just search for William Lindis and I'll be there as well.
All right. And you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. We likely have some friends in common. Feel free to add me, but please just send me a message. Don't be that random cute face that pops up. And I'm not sure if you're a bot or not. Is that a website? I know we used to have Hot or Not. Is there bot or not?
Bot or not? Is it like, is that like a Blade Runner technology? Like
I think so. I think it is.
It's like hot dog, not hot dog.
Indeed. And definitely, feel free to say hello. Just a quick thank you to everyone who joined us this week in the live chat. Jordan Riley, Mike Lovins, Eric's Reloaded, Eric, Bobby Miller, Steve Zosa. It was great hanging out with all of you fine folks. And a big hearty thank you to those of you listening on digital tape delay. You may not be with us live, but we still want to hear from you too. So feel free to jump on Facebook, jump on Twitter, say hola, tell us about some movies you've seen lately. We'd love to chat film with you guys. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Happy 2019. Here's to another wonderful year of film, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.